These renegades,
Like T-City Bull,
Tom Paine,
Dr. Martin Luther King,
Malcolm X,
they were renegades.
yes, the renegade.
That time and age.
Somebody renegade.
Now hand clap. Now renegade.
Yes, sir.
See, Joe.
Alright.
I'll send you that link.
Yeah, okay, good.
How you guys feeling? Feeling all right?
Alright.
So here's what we're gonna do. I'm here at Cornell University in Lincoln Hall. I'm with Afrika Bambaataa, the godfather of hip hop culture, Universal Zulu Nation. I'm with DrShaka Zulu, Zulu Nation, Joe Conzo, the photographer, the man who took hip hop's baby pictures. So the first thing I want to do is present this book, Martin Luther King's last book, which is called Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community. I'm going to present Bam with a copy of the book and let you know a little bit about the organization we have here in town, which is called the MLK Community Build. And what we did as our first major initiative is to print 10,000 copies of that book and distribute them county-wide for free, right?
Awesome.
Half of them actually went to middle schoolers and high schoolers to talk about as part of their curriculum this year. But the other half are distributed all throughout town to create this widespread civic dialogue about MLK and this book in particular, which as his final book, which came out in 68 it came out, it was written in 67. It actually came out just after he was assassinated. It's about his more radical politics, his world view. This is post civil rights, so-called civil rights, right? People can eat at the lunch counters now. There's no more.
Basically what got him killed.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Exactly. So what we're doing right now, this video is going to be posted on our website, and there's information about our website on the sticker inside the front cover there. We want to put this as a piece of our community blog, which is something that we recently launched to get people to contribute thoughts and perspectives, not just about MLK in the book, but about race, class, equality, education, classism, and whatnot. So if we could just take 5-10 minutes and reflect on what impact Martin Luther King Jr. had on each of you, had on the Zulu Nation and the creation of the Zulu Nation, and what was his impact on hip-hop, if any.
Martin Luther King was a strong leader who was dealing more in civil rights, who picked up what was happening, like with Rosa Parks and others who decided they wasn't going to be sitting no more in the back of a bus down in the South. And when he started seeing that these other leaders was causing movement, he was the man to bring it to a mass movement and organize in many of the churches to bring about a movement to do marches to that famous march on Washington. And he had his time of what he was doing that we respect for what he did for fighting oppression, imperialism, and whatever else that was happening at the time, and bringing to the forefront what black people who was being called that derogatory word of Negroes, or using the N-word at that time, to the forefront, along with another master teacher, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, with the Nation of Islam. So we look at both of them, and Malcolm X and Martin and anybody else who at the time from SNCC or the Panther Party or other groups that was coming out that did anything to bring about the cause of what was happening in the so-called black community, or what we call ancient Moors community, to the forefront of racism that was happening in our country on a big time and a big level.
Basically, the impact that Dr. King had on
myself and my family was that, my grandmother, Dr. Evelina Antonetti, adopted a lot of Dr. King's ideas in terms of equality for the blacks and Hispanics in the South Bronx, civil rights. As a young kid, growing up, going to these demonstrations at the Board of Education and City Hall, were all ideas adopted from Dr. King that my grandmother instilled in me. And, to this day, I still live by a lot of that stuff in terms of equality and just being sensitive to people and their needs and wanting to, have basic human rights. I've taken a lot of that in terms of union activism that I, being a union officer with the, New York City Fire Department, that basic right of, of a worker, so to speak, a safe working environment, equal pay, so, all of that, has made a difference in my life growing up as a young man, as an adult today, through Dr. King's movement, his wishes, and instilled in me by my grandmother, and my mother, and my father. And hopefully I can do the same and pass it on to my kids.
Dr. Martin Luther King's impact on me. I'm a little bit younger than the two previous gentlemen that spoke a few seconds ago.
Don't even try it.
I just look better. However, I did grow up with the impact and the feeling of Dr. Martin Luther King because my grandmother and my mother would have pictures of MLK in every room of our home. And you would have Martin Luther King right next to the Bible, picture of Martin Luther King right next to the Bible. Sometimes you may find a Jesus. So I grew up thinking that Martin Luther King
was right up there.
Yeah, he was right up there, or he's a great uncle of my family.
Yeah.
And it was years later on that I started hearing and seeing the speeches and reading excerpts of his literature that he put out. And I found that Martin Luther King was a great man, stood up for civil rights. I admire his patience, his perseverance, and unfortunately, I didn't like the way that I also came up in a time in the era where you had people who was putting out little misinformation about MLK, and they had it surrounded where Martin Luther King was just this soft civil rights activist, and Malcolm X is the hardcore, and for certain people they were more gravitated for the hardcore approach that Malcolm X supposedly had, where I found later on through research and study that Martin Luther King was just as radical, if not even more, than Malcolm X. It's just that he just chose to do it from a different way. And I think that this book that my good brother Ben Ortiz just shared with DrShaka Zulu is a great read for not just myself, but for everyone around the world to know a lot more information about Dr. Martin Luther King. And again, I want to say that I admire his intelligence. I admire his patience, his perseverance, to be able to stand and be steadfast in the wake of obstacles, in the wake of individuals, the so-called government in which we all put our hands across our heart and we take an allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and for liberty and justice for all, and in which we weren't all able to exercise and benefit from. And these are the different principles that Martin Luther King, he definitely addressed, and I really appreciate that, because even now in 2011, we still have to ask ourselves. I ask this in a lot of my lectures about the so-called dream. I have a dream, and if Martin Luther King was still alive, would the dream be, why is it that the American dream for blacks and Latinos is the American nightmare? And this is a question that is not for me to answer. This is a question for maybe some of you that's listening to this need to answer. Where is the American dream? Where is it at for you and mine? Or is it a nightmare?
One thing I do not like that they're doing to Martin Luther King a lot of times when they do the Martin Luther King birthday or holiday, I don't like them taking the date of his born day, which is the 15th, because now these days you barely know when was he born. They put it the 20th because they want a long weekend, or they put it some other date and skip the date of where he was really born. So that's going to be misconstrued in history, but people ain't going to even know what his date is. Right. And they also been lighting him up the same way they trying to do to the Egyptian pyramids, you know, to make it look other than what they was. So this is something that we got to watch out for, because they messing around with a legacy here and messing with the man's born date. And you should tell the exact date when somebody is born. But if you're going to enjoy it as a holiday, say we're going to celebrate it on this day, not change the whole date and put it, you know, this date. You know, you still say George Washington was the 22nd of February and Lincoln was the 12th and stuff. But you say we having it this weekend or something. So don't go start changing Martin Luther King and all this around.
That's right. So just the last thing I want to tease out a bit is because I'm personally very interested in what your perspective might be on how MLK and who he was, and the fact that he was not with hip-hop during its birth. How did that impact hip-hop? Would it have been...
The thing that, you ever seen the Boondocks when Martin Luther King came back to the
That's right.
party and
talk about that last night.
what was happening? Now, that's deep. Everybody need to go back, that's in hip-hop, and go watch that chapter. What would Martin Luther King think of you coming, if he came back in this day and time and fought so much for your freedom, for you could go to any school you want, sit at whatever counter that you could eat at, and be among other people of colors or races, and eat and drink and talk and whatever, and you walking around sagging or using the N-word left and right, or calling each other out of your names, and I don't care what race or nationality you come from. Right. What would you think he would say now if he was in this day and time? So that thing that they did on the if I said the Boondocks series, every hip hop person or everybody in the world need to see that little program, and that's more reality of what Martin Luther King probably would say this day and time if he was to come back like Jesus.
All right. Any other thoughts about hip hop and MLK?
I guess you can find some of his beliefs in the culture, in our culture, you know, beginning with knowledge and peace, you know, something that we strive to instill in the young folks of today. We got it when we were growing up, you know, so we're passing it along, and basically that's it. But I'm definitely gonna look for that episode Pam was talking about.
Yes.
I would like to know.
Oh yeah.
I would like to know. Yeah. He's a man that gave his life for others. Yeah, and a lot of people are just, you know, taking advantage and not exercising their rights, and just reverting back 60 years and stuff. But thanks, man.
Indeed.
So hip hop with Martin Luther King, his connection. I want to say that Dr. Martin Luther King is also founded by DrShaka Zulu as a Grand Master of rap. Dr. Martin Luther King showed the principles of one of the elements that we talk about in the 5 elements of Universal Zulu Nation of hip hop. Martin Luther King expressed the element of the MC, the microphone controller, the thought tank of Tahuti, brought forth out to the people, sharing the peace and the unity and the love. And also, we also find, hopefully we'll look into this book too and see that Martin Luther King also went and had some fun.